Jake Morrison stood at the window of his office on New Geneva Station, watching ships move through the busy space lanes. As Earth's main ambassador to the Galactic Council, he had seen many changes over the past 15 years. But today felt different. Today felt like an ending. The message on his desk glowed with a red priority seal. Jake had read it 3 times already, but the words still made his stomach twist. High Command was calling them home, all of them. Every human in Council space was to pack up and leave within 90 days. No exceptions. Jake touched the communication button on his desk. "Lisa, can you come to my office, please?" Captain Lisa Bennett arrived 5 minutes later. She commanded the cargo ship Terra Nova, one of the largest human vessels in this sector. Lisa was tough, smart, and loyal. Jake trusted her completely. "Close the door," Jake said quietly. Lisa sat down across from his desk. "You look terrible." "Jake, what's wrong?" Jake handed her the message pad. Lisa's face grew serious as she read. When she finished, she looked up at him with surprise. "They're pulling everyone out? All humans?" "Every last one of us," Jake confirmed. "Operation Silent Dawn starts tomorrow morning." Lisa leaned back in her chair. "About time, if you ask me. The Council treats us like children, always has," Jake nodded slowly. Yesterday, the Council had passed Resolution 847C. The vote was unanimous. Among the elder species, humans were officially classified as a developing species that needed guided supervision for another 100 years. It was the final insult. For decades, humans had worked hard to prove themselves worthy of respect. They took the dangerous jobs no one else wanted. They fixed problems other species couldn't solve. They kept the peace between races that had been fighting for centuries, and what did they get for it? More restrictions. More condescension. More reminders that they were the newest members of this ancient club. "The Zephyrians think we're pets," Lisa said bitterly. "And the Nexari treat us like we're too stupid to understand basic science. Well, we're about to show them what happens." "When their pets leave home?" Jake replied. Lisa smiled for the first time since entering his office. "What do you need me to do?" "Coordinate with all human ship captains in this sector. Everyone needs to be ready to move fast. No advance warning to our alien colleagues. No farewell speeches, we just disappear. What about our contracts? Our research projects?" Jake stood up and walked to the window again. Outside, he could see Dr. Alan Hayes' laboratory complex on the station's research ring. Alan had been working there for 8 years, developing new technologies that had revolutionized space travel for the entire Council. His quantum drive improvements had cut travel time between star systems by 60%. "Alan gets to take his research with him," Jake said. "All of it. The Council never bothered to read the fine print in our research agreements. Anything a human scientist discovers belongs to Earth, not the Council." Lisa whistled softly. "That's going to hurt them." "That's the point," Jake said. "For too long, we've been too polite, too eager to please. We've been so busy trying to fit in that we forgot our own worth." Jake turned back to Lisa. "Contact every human facility manager, every shop owner, every service provider. They take everything, equipment, supplies, data files, everything. If humans built it, fixed it, or improved it, it comes with us. What about the aliens we work with? Some of them are friends." Jake's expression softened. "The good ones will understand. The rest, well, they'll learn what we were really worth when we're gone." Over the next 3 days, something remarkable happened across Council space. Humans began to vanish. Not dramatically, not with angry protests or demands. They simply packed up and left. On research stations throughout the galaxy, human scientists quietly transferred decades of work to secure Earth servers. Dr. Alan Hayes spent 2 nights moving his entire quantum physics database. His Zephyrian assistant, Veltar, didn't even notice. Veltar had always assumed the research belonged to the station. Trade hubs that had run smoothly for years suddenly found their schedules falling apart. Kelly Nash had been managing supply chains for 40% of Council space from her office. On Centauri Prime, she had memorized the needs, schedules, and preferences of 12 different species. The computer systems could track cargo, but they couldn't predict what was needed where, or how to solve problems when ships broke down or routes changed. Kelly spent her last week training her Nexari replacement, but it was hopeless. The alien couldn't understand why humans had been moving certain supplies early, or why some routes worked better than others. Just follow the schedule, he kept saying. Kelly tried to explain that the schedule was just a starting point, that successful logistics required constant adjustment and intuition. But he didn't listen. Military bases across Council space found themselves in similar trouble. Captain Ron Brooks had been running joint training exercises between human, Zephyrian, and Nexari forces. Under his guidance, the different species had learned to work together in ways that seemed impossible before. Ron understood that Zephyrians were brave but reckless. Nexari were careful but slow to adapt. Humans were creative and flexible. He had developed training programs that used each species' strengths to cover the other's weaknesses. His mixed species units performed 3 times better than single-race teams, but when Ron left, he took more than just his training manuals. He took the understanding of how to make different species work together. The programs he had written could be copied, but the insight behind them couldn't be transferred to someone else. On New Geneva Station, engineer Maya Foster made her final checks on the quantum resonance systems that kept the massive structure stable in space. Maya had designed these systems herself, improving on older precursor technology that the Council had never fully understood. The original precursor stabilizers worked, but they were inefficient and required constant maintenance. Maya's improvements had made them 90% more reliable and cut power consumption in half. Every major Council station now used her designs, but Maya had never shared the complete technical specifications. The Council engineers knew how to perform routine maintenance, but they didn't understand the underlying principles. They followed Maya's procedures without knowing why those procedures worked. As Maya sealed her final report and transferred her personal files to a secure Earth server, she wondered how long it would take for the stabilizers to start failing. Probably 6 months, maybe a year. When they did, the Council would have to figure out how to fix them without her help. Jake Morrison took one last look around his office before leaving New Geneva Station. 15 years of his life had been spent here, trying to build bridges between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. He had believed that patience and hard work would eventually earn humans the respect they deserved. He had been wrong. Respect wasn't something you earned from people who were determined to see you as inferior. Sometimes you had to demand it. And sometimes the best way to demand respect was to show people what they lost when they didn't give it freely. Jake picked up his bag and walked toward the docking bay where Lisa's ship was waiting. Behind him, New Geneva Station continued its daily operations, unaware that everything was about to change. The humans had departed in silence, but their absence would speak louder than any words they could have said. 3 months had passed since the humans left, and Councillor Vexhai of the Zephyrians felt quite pleased with himself. Standing at the podium in the great council chambers, his silver skin gleaming under the ceremonial lights, he addressed the assembled representatives of 12 species. "My fellow councillors," Vexhai said in his deep, resonant voice, "I trust you have all noticed the improved atmosphere in our meetings since the departure of the humans. No more interruptions with their constant questions and suggestions. More delays while they explain their primitive viewpoints." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Nexari delegate, her forearms folded in satisfaction, nodded her triangular head. "Indeed, Councillor Vexhai. The humans always slowed down our decision-making process with their endless need for explanations." "Exactly," Vexhai continued. "The galaxy continues to function perfectly without them. In fact, I would argue that we are more efficient than ever before." What Vexhai didn't know was that at that very moment, on the other side of the galaxy, Transport Captain Zechthel was staring at a cargo manifest that made no sense. The Telarian freighter captain had been transporting goods between worlds for 30 years, but he had never seen such confusion. "Computer, explain this shipping order," Zechthel commanded in his clicking language. "Destination? Kepler Colony?" Cargo: 3,000 tons of frozen Altarian fish, 500 atmospheric processors, and 2 million units of Type 7 medical supplies. Zecthel's mandibles clicked in frustration. Kepler colony is a desert world with a population of 50,000 miners. Why would they need frozen fish and atmospheric processors? Unknown, the computer replied. This shipping order was generated by the automated logistics system. Before the humans left, Kelly Nash would have caught this mistake immediately. She knew that Kepler colony needed mining equipment and water recyclers, not fish and atmospheric processors. The fish should have gone to the water world of Aquatica, and the processors should have gone to the new terraform project on Gamma Centauri. But Kelly was gone, and the computer system only followed its basic programming. It could track where cargo was supposed to go according to written orders, but it couldn't think about whether those orders made sense. Zecthel tried to contact the logistics center, but the Nexari coordinator was overwhelmed. Similar problems were happening across the galaxy. Ships were arriving at the wrong planets. Colonies were receiving supplies they didn't need while going without things they desperately required on the military station Fortress Prime. General Coulthor of the Zephyrian Defense Force was having his own problems. The aging warrior stood in the command center, watching a tactical display that showed the results of the morning's training exercise. It was a disaster. Explain this failure, he growled to his aide, a young Nexari officer named Tekelin S. Skin color shifted to pale blue, indicating nervousness. Sir, the mixed species units are performing at only 30% efficiency. The coordination protocols are breaking down. General Coulthar studied the display. Just 6 months ago, these same units had been performing flawlessly under Captain Ron Brooks' guidance. The human had developed training methods that seemed almost magical in their effectiveness. Zephyrian aggression balanced by Nexari caution, with human creativity tying everything together, but Ron was gone, and with him went the understanding of how to make different species work as one team. The training manuals he had left behind were detailed, but they were just words on a screen. They couldn't capture the intuition and experience that had made his methods work. Sir, Tekelin said carefully, perhaps we should contact the humans and ask them to return their military advisors. General Coulthar's eyes flashed with anger. Absolutely not. We are Zephyrians. We have been warriors for 10,000 years. We do not need help from a species that has barely left their home planet. What the general didn't realize was that his own flagship, the mighty dreadnought Conquest, was slowly developing problems that would soon become critical. In the engineering section deep within the ship, Chief Engineer Morduck stared at readings that confused him. The quantum resonance. Stabilizers are showing irregularities, he reported to his assistant. Should we follow the maintenance procedures left by Engineer Foster? The assistant asked. Morduck's pride bristled. Maya Foster had been a human engineer who had worked on their systems for 3 years. She had made improvements that increased efficiency and reduced maintenance needs. But Morduck had never liked taking orders from someone he considered primitive. We follow our own procedures, he said firmly. Zephyrian engineering is superior to human tinkering. But as the days passed, the stabilizer problems grew worse. The procedures Maya had left behind were specific and detailed, but they were also incomplete. She had never written down the underlying principles because she had always been there to handle unusual situations herself. Maya understood that quantum stabilizers were temperamental. They needed to be adjusted based on gravitational fields, stellar radiation, and a dozen other factors that changed constantly. Her procedures worked when conditions were normal, but space was rarely normal. On the civilian side, things weren't going much better. On New Geneva Station, Administrator Pelinox was discovering that running a space station was harder than he had expected. For 15 years, he had watched humans handle the day-to-day operations while he focused on what he considered the important work of policy and regulations. Now he was learning that the unimportant daily operations were actually the foundation. That kept everything else working. Sir, his assistant reported, We have 17 minor system failures across the station. The water recyclers in Section 7 are making strange noises. The gravity generators in the residential areas are fluctuating, and the atmospheric processors are running hot. Pelinox felt a growing sense of panic. Each of these problems seemed small, but there were so many of them. Before, the human maintenance crews had handled these issues quickly and quietly. He had barely noticed their work. "Contact the engineering teams," he ordered. "Sir, the engineering teams say they're following all the standard procedures, but the problems keep getting worse." What Pelinox didn't understand was that Maya Foster and her human engineers had been doing much more than following procedures. They had been constantly improving and adjusting the station's systems, solving small problems before they became big ones, and making modifications that the official manuals never mentioned. The humans had treated the station like a living thing that needed care and attention. The alien engineers treated it like a machine that should work according to specifications. In the Council's medical center, Dr. Yolandra was facing her own crisis. The brilliant Nexari physician had always considered herself superior to human doctors. After all, her species had been practicing medicine for thousands of years before. Humans had even discovered fire, but now she was looking at test results that made no sense. A new strain of bacterial infection was spreading through the outer rim colonies, and none of her treatments were working. "Computer, analyze the bacterial sample and recommend treatment protocols," she commanded. "Analysis complete. This bacterial strain shows resistance to all standard antibiotic treatments. Recommend consulting specialist in cross-species pathology." "Doctor." Yolandra's blood turned cold. The specialist in cross-species pathology had been Dr. Steve Cooper, a human physician who had studied how diseases affected different alien species. Steve had developed treatment protocols that worked across multiple biologies, something that most alien doctors had thought impossible, but Steve was gone, and with him went years of research into how different species' immune systems interacted. Dr. Yolandra realized that she was facing a plague that could spread across multiple worlds, and she had no idea how to stop it. Back in the council chambers, Councillor Vexhai was finishing his speech about the benefits of human absence. The assembled delegates applauded politely, but several of them were beginning to have private doubts. They had all received reports of minor problems in their territories. Supply chain issues, military coordination problems, engineering failures, medical challenges. Individually, each problem seemed manageable. But taken together, they suggested something that none of the proud alien species wanted to admit. Maybe the humans had been more important than anyone had realized. As Vexhai left the podium, confident in his speech's success, he had no idea that across the galaxy, the infrastructure that kept civilization running was slowly beginning to crumble. The humans had departed in silence, but their absence was starting to speak very loudly indeed. 6 months after the humans vanished, Trade Minister Kexeloth sat in his office on the commercial hub of Vega Prime, staring at economic reports that made his stomach hurt. The numbers were bad and getting worse every day. "Explain this to me." "Again," he said to his assistant, pointing at the holographic display showing trade routes across the galaxy. "Sir, the interspecies trade protocol has crashed 17 times this week. Currency exchanges are failing. The Altarian credit has lost 40% of its value against the Zephyrian standard. And the Nexari refused to accept crystalline energy units for payment." Kexeloth rubbed his temples with all 4 of his hands. The trade protocol had been running smoothly for over a decade, managing the complex exchange of currencies between species with completely different economic systems. Some aliens valued rare metals, others prized energy crystals, and still others traded in information or biological samples. Dr. Peter Morgan had designed the system that made it all work. The human economist had somehow found a way to create exchange rates between things as different as Tylerian artwork and Nexari computational cycles. His algorithm had been so elegant, so perfectly balanced, that everyone had taken it for granted, but Peter was gone and his system was falling apart. The algorithm needed constant updates as markets shifted and new trade goods appeared. Without Peter's insight into the psychology and economics of 12 different species, the automated system was making terrible mistakes. "Sir," his assistant continued nervously, "the Crystalline Confederation is threatening to pull out of the trade network entirely. They say the exchange rates are unfair," Kexaloth groaned. "If the crystallines left, they would take their energy technology with them. Half the galaxy depended on crystalline power cells, but without fair trade rates, there would be no way to buy them." Meanwhile, on the edge of Council space, Security Chief Velmorath was dealing with a different kind of crisis. The green-scaled reptilian officer stood in the command center of Council security, watching threat indicators light up across the star map like a disease spreading through space. "Status report," she hissed to her team. "Multiple incidents across the outer rim," reported her aide. "Pirates attacking merchant vessels on the Kepler route. Smugglers using the old asteroid belt passage. Unknown ships detected in the Forbidden Zone near the Galactic core." Velmorath's eyes narrowed. "What about our early warning systems? Where are the threat assessments?" "That's the problem, ma'am. We're getting data from our long-range sensors, but no one can analyze it properly. The computers can detect ships and energy signatures, but they can't tell us what they mean or how dangerous they are." For 8 years, Intelligence Chief Bill Warren had been the person who made sense of the galaxy's security data. The human had possessed an almost supernatural ability to spot patterns in seemingly random information. He could look at sensor readings, ship movements, and communication intercepts, and somehow know when trouble was coming. Bill had tried to teach his alien colleagues his methods, but it was like trying to teach someone to breathe. To him, threat analysis was intuitive. He saw connections that others missed, recognized patterns that shouldn't have been obvious, and trusted hunches that usually turned out to be right. Now, the galaxy's security network was drowning in data it couldn't understand. Ships were moving in unusual patterns, but no one could tell if they were merchants, pirates, or something worse. Energy signatures were appearing in empty space, but the computers couldn't determine if they were natural phenomena or cloaked vessels. "Ma'am," her aide said quietly, "there's something else. We've lost contact with monitoring station Alpha 7 in the Vega system." Velmorath felt a chill run down her spine. Alpha 7 was one of their most important early warning posts. If something had happened to it, they might not know about incoming threats until it was too late. On the medical station Sanctuary, Dr. Yolandra was fighting a battle she was losing. The bacterial infection that had started in the outer rim colonies was spreading faster than anyone had expected. Worse, it was mutating as it jumped between different species. "Report," she demanded as she entered the emergency medical center. 17 new cases in the last 6 hours, replied her assistant, Dr. Morketh. The infection has now been confirmed on 12 different worlds, affecting 6 different species. Dr. Yolandra looked at the genetic analysis of the bacteria. It was like nothing she had ever seen before. The organism seemed to adapt itself to each new host species, changing its structure to overcome different immune systems. "Have you tried the standard broad-spectrum treatments?" "Yes, doctor." "They work for a few hours, then the bacteria develops resistance. It's as if the organism is learning from our treatments and adapting to overcome them." Dr. Yolandra wished desperately that Dr. Steve Cooper was still here. The human physician had spent years studying how diseases affected different alien biologies. He had discovered that many pathogens could be stopped by understanding the common elements in all species' immune responses. Steve had developed a treatment approach that attacked infections at the cellular level, targeting the basic life processes that all organisms shared. His methods worked across species because they focused on universal biological principles rather than the specific features of individual immune systems. But Steve's research notes were incomplete. He had taken the crucial data with him when the humans left. Without his insight into cross-species biology, the medical teams were fighting the plague with treatments designed for single species, and the bacteria was too smart for that approach. On the industrial world of Titan III, mine supervisor, Krathic was discovering that asteroid mining was much more dangerous than he had realized. The massive mining platform hung in space near a field of valuable asteroids, but the operation had ground to a halt. "Status report," Krathic demanded, his rocky crystalline features reflecting the red warning lights that filled the control room. "Sir, we've lost 3 mining ships this week. The asteroid field is too dangerous for our pilots to navigate." Krathic studied the tactical display. The asteroid field contained more rare metals than most planets, but the rocks moved in chaotic patterns that made mining extremely hazardous. Gravitational forces from nearby stars pulled the asteroids in unpredictable directions, creating a deadly maze that shifted constantly. "What about the safe corridors?" he asked. "Sir, the corridors mapped by Captain Gray's team are out of date. The asteroids have moved, and our pilots don't know how to find new safe routes." Captain Linda Gray and her human mining fleet had spent 3 years mapping the asteroid fields and creating safe navigation routes. Linda had an intuitive understanding of gravitational mechanics that allowed her to predict how asteroids would move. Her team had cleared paths through the most dangerous fields, making them accessible to the slower, less maneuverable alien vessels. But Linda was gone, and with her went the knowledge of how to work safely in the chaotic environment of asteroid fields. The alien miners were skilled at extracting ore once they reached the asteroids, but they couldn't get there safely without human guidance. "Sir," his aide reported, "the Zephyrian Trade Consortium is threatening to cancel their contracts if we can't deliver the promised rare metals." Krathic felt his crystalline structure dim with worry. Without access to the asteroid fields, their mining operation would collapse. The rare metals found in those asteroids were essential for advanced technology across the galaxy. If they couldn't mine them safely, the entire galactic economy would suffer. On New Geneva Station, Administrator Pelinox was facing a crisis that grew worse every day. What had started as minor system failures was now a cascade of problems that threatened the station's survival. "Report?" he said to his chief engineer, trying to keep the panic out of his voice. "Sir, we now have failures in 37 different systems. Life support is operating at 60% efficiency. The gravity generators are producing irregular fields that are making people sick. And the structural integrity of the outer ring is showing stress fractures." Pelinox stared at the damage reports. Each individual problem seemed manageable, but they were all connected in ways he didn't understand. Fixing one system seemed to create problems in others. What about the maintenance procedures left by the human engineers? "Sir, we followed every procedure exactly, but the problems keep getting worse. It's as if the station is falling apart faster than we can fix it." What Pelinox didn't realize was that Maya Foster and her team had been doing much more than routine maintenance. They had been constantly modifying and improving the station's systems, solving problems before they became critical, and making adjustments that prevented one failure from causing others. The humans had understood that a space station was not just a collection of separate systems, but a complex organism where everything affected everything else. The alien engineers saw each system as independent and tried to fix problems in isolation. As Pelinox reviewed the latest reports, he realized that New Geneva Station might become uninhabitable within months. The cascade of failures was accelerating, and traditional engineering approaches weren't working. 1 year after the humans left, Supreme Counselor Thexmaran stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council. The ancient Nexari leader had ruled for 3 centuries, but he had never seen the galaxy in such chaos. His normally calm demeanor was cracking under the weight of crisis reports that arrived hourly. "Fellow counselors," he began, his forearms trembling slightly, "we face the greatest crisis in our recorded history. Our economy has collapsed. Our security networks have failed. Disease spreads unchecked through our colonies. Our infrastructure crumbles around us." The chamber was quieter than usual. 3 species had already withdrawn from the council, their governments too busy dealing with local disasters to attend meetings. The remaining delegates looked exhausted and frightened. Counselor Vexhai, who had spoken so confidently about human departure just months before, now sat slumped in his chair. His silver skin had lost its shine and his proud posture was gone. The Zephyrian Empire was falling apart, and everyone knew it. We must face the truth, Dexmeron continued. Our troubles began when the humans departed. We must swallow our pride and ask them to return. Murmurs of reluctant agreement filled the chamber. No one wanted to admit that they needed help from the species they had treated as children, but the alternative was watching their civilization collapse completely. I propose we send a delegation to the Sol system immediately, Dexmeron announced. Ambassador Quindle will lead the mission. Ambassador Quindle of the Tellurian Republic stood slowly. The insect-like diplomat had always been one of the more reasonable voices in the council, but even she looked worried. Supreme Counselor, what terms should we offer the humans? Dexmeron's expression was grim. Whatever they want. Our survival depends on their return. 3 days later, Ambassador Quindle's fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. She had brought 5 ships and a full diplomatic team, expecting to find humans cowering on their homeworld, grateful for the chance to rejoin Galactic society. Instead, what she found made her mandibles click in surprise. Captain, she said to her ship's pilot, are you certain we're in the right system? Yes, Ambassador. These are definitely the coordinates for Sol, but... Quindle stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The Sol system was bustling with activity, but not the kind she had expected. Massive space stations orbited several planets. Ships moved in organized patterns between the worlds. Most shocking of all, some of those ships belonged to species she recognized. Scan those vessels, she ordered. Ma'am, I'm detecting Delphian bioships, crystalline energy vessels, and something I've never seen before. The computer can't identify the ship designs. Quindle felt a chill run through her exoskeleton. The Delphians and crystari were species the Council had dismissed as primitive. The aquatic Delphians lived in underwater cities and rarely traveled to space. The silicon-based crystari were considered too slow and methodical for modern galactic society. Request permission to approach Earth, she commanded. The response came. Quickly, but not from who she expected. A human voice, calm and professional, filled the bridge. Tellurian vessel, this is Admiral Joe Martin of the Earth Defense Fleet. State your business in our space. Admiral Joe Martin? Quindle remembered him as Captain Martin, a mid-level human officer who had served on Council patrol ships. Now he was apparently commanding Earth's entire fleet. Admiral Martin, I am Ambassador Quindle of the Galactic Council. I request permission to meet with Earth's government to discuss important matters. There was a long pause before Admiral Martin responded. Ambassador, you are welcome to visit Earth as a private citizen. However, the Sol Alliance does not recognize the authority of the Galactic Council. If you wish to conduct official business, you will need to follow proper diplomatic channels. Sol Alliance? Quindle asked, confused. The alliance between Earth, Delphia, Crystar, and the Lumens. Perhaps you should speak with our Foreign Minister, Janet Mills. An hour later, Quindle found herself in a conference room on Luna Station, facing a human woman she didn't recognize. Janet Mills was in her 50s, with graying hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through diplomatic pretense. Ambassador Quindle, Janet said politely, welcome to the Sol system. I understand you have concerns to discuss. Quindle tried to maintain her composure, but the situation was completely different from what she had expected. Minister Mills, the Galactic Council requests that humanity return to Council space. We are prepared to offer significant concessions. Janet's expression didn't change. What kind of concessions? Full membership rights, access to advanced technology, equal representation in Council decisions. We realize we may have been hasty in our previous classifications. Janet smiled, but it wasn't a warm expression. Ambassador, I appreciate your offer, but humanity is no longer interested in joining an organization that treated us as second-class citizens for decades. But surely you understand the benefits of galactic cooperation, Quindle protested. The Council represents the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Does it? Janet asked quietly. Because from what we hear, those advanced civilizations are having some serious problems lately. Quindle's mandibles clicked nervously. There have been some minor difficulties, but nothing that cannot be resolved. Janet leaned forward. Ambassador, we know about the economic collapse. We know about the plague spreading through the outer rim. We know about the security failures and the infrastructure breakdowns. Your minor difficulties are destroying the galaxy, which is exactly why we need human assistance, Quindle said desperately. Surely you don't want to see suffering across the galaxy. Of course not, Janet replied, which is why the Soul Alliance has been accepting refugees from failed council worlds. We've provided medical assistance to plague victims. We've shared our new technologies with species that treat us as equals. Quindle felt her hope draining away. What would it take for humanity to reconsider? Janet stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the busy space lanes around Luna. Ships from 4 different species moved in perfect coordination, their crews working together with an efficiency that the Council had never achieved. Ambassador, 3 years ago your Council passed a resolution declaring humanity a developing species in need of supervision. You treated our scientists like children, our diplomats like servants, and our contributions like charity you were graciously accepting. We were wrong, Quindle admitted quietly. Yes, you were. But it's too late for apologies. We found partners who value what we bring to the relationship. The Delphians appreciate our exploration skills. The Crystri value our innovation. The Lumens admire our adaptability. Janet turned back to face the ambassador. Each of our partners brings something unique to our alliance. The Delphians have biological technologies that surpass anything the Council ever developed. The Crystri have computational abilities that make your best computers look like toys. The Lumens understand energy manipulation in ways that could revolutionize space travel. But the Council has resources, Quindle protested. We have the infrastructure of centuries. Had, Janet corrected. From what our intelligence reports tell us, most of that infrastructure is breaking down without human maintenance. And frankly, we're building something better. As if to prove her point, the windows suddenly lit up with the arrival of a massive ship. Quindle stared in amazement at a vessel unlike anything she had ever seen. It was clearly of human design, but it incorporated elements from all 4 Alliance species. That's the UES Independence, Janet said proudly. Our first joint construction project. It uses Delphian biotechnology for self-repair, Crystri computational cores for navigation, Lumen energy systems for power, and human engineering to tie it all together. Quindle realized with growing horror that humanity hadn't just left the Council, they had found something better. While the galaxy's old powers crumbled, the humans were building a new civilization from scratch. What can we do? She asked desperately. Janet's expression softened slightly. Ambassador, individual Council species are welcome to apply for Alliance membership, but they have to accept our principles, equality, cooperation, and respect for all members. And if the Council refuses, Janet shrugged, then the Council can try to solve its problems without us. But I should warn you, we're not the same species that left your space a year ago. We've grown, we've learned, and we've discovered capabilities we never knew we had. As Quindle prepared to leave Luna Station, she realized that her mission had failed completely. She had come expecting to find desperate humans eager to return to galactic civilization. Instead, she had found a thriving new alliance that was already surpassing the Council's achievements. The humans had departed in silence, but they had not spent that time in isolation. They had been building the foundation for a new kind of galactic society, one based on mutual respect rather than ancient hierarchies. Quindle's ship began its journey back to Council space, carrying news that would shatter what remained of the old order. The humans were not coming back. They had found something better than what the Council had ever offered them, and worse yet, they were succeeding without any help from the species that had once considered themselves superior. 2 years after humanity's departure, the galaxy was at war. Commander Grace Turner stood on the bridge of the UES Independence, watching the long-range sensors detect another battle raging in what used to be Council space. The human officer, shook her head sadly as she read the tactical reports. "Status report," she said to her aide, Lieutenant Carl White. "Ma'am, fighting has broken out between the Zephyrians and the Nexari over control of the Vega trade routes. The Telarians are backing the Nexari, while the Crystallans have allied with the Zephyrians. Casualty reports indicate over 50,000 dead in the last week alone." Grace felt sick to her stomach. She remembered when tensions like this had been common in Council space before humans had learned to mediate between the different species. For decades, she had worked as a diplomatic mediator, finding ways to resolve conflicts before they exploded into violence. The secret had been understanding what each species really wanted, not just what they said they wanted. Zephyrians valued honor and respect above all else. Nexari needed to feel that decisions were logical and well-planned. Telarians wanted to be included in discussions. While Crystallans required time to consider all options carefully, Grace had learned to structure negotiations so that each species could get what they truly needed while still reaching agreements. That benefited everyone. She had prevented 17 wars during her career with the Council, conflicts that would have killed millions of beings, but Grace was gone, and with her went the knowledge of how to make peace between species that had been enemies for thousands of years. The Council's remaining diplomats tried to use standard negotiation techniques, but they didn't understand the deep psychological needs that drove each species to conflict. "Lieutenant White, any word from our intelligence networks about refugee movements?" "Yes, ma'am. Another 40,000 beings have requested asylum in Sol Alliance space this month. That brings the total to over 2 million refugees who have fled Council territory." Grace nodded grimly. The Sol Alliance had established refugee camps on 17 different worlds, providing safety for beings who no longer felt secure in their home territories. The camps were well run and comfortable, but they represented a massive humanitarian crisis. On the research station Kepler 442b, Dr. Ryan Clark was making a discovery that would change everything. The human physicist had been studying dimensional physics for 3 years, ever since leaving Council space. Free from the Council's restrictive research guidelines, he had been able to explore theories that the alien scientists had considered too dangerous or impossible. "Computer, run the final analysis on the dimensional fold equations," Ryan commanded. "Analysis complete, Dr. Clark. The equations indicate that stable dimensional bridges are theoretically possible using the energy patterns we detected in the precursor ruins." Ryan stared at the results, hardly believing what he was seeing. The precursor ruins scattered throughout the galaxy had always been mysterious. The ancient structures contained technology that even the Council's best scientists couldn't fully understand. But Ryan's new approach to dimensional physics was revealing secrets that had been hidden for millions of years. "Computer, project the implications if these dimensional bridges could be constructed." "Dr. Clark, such technology would allow instantaneous travel between any 2 points in the galaxy. Communication delays would be eliminated. Transportation costs would drop to nearly zero." Ryan felt his pulse quicken. This wasn't just a scientific breakthrough, it was technology that could revolutionize galactic civilization. And unlike the slow, careful approach favored by Council scientists, Ryan was making rapid progress because the Sol Alliance encouraged bold experimentation. Meanwhile, Captain Nick Roberts was leading an exploration mission that would soon make an even more shocking discovery. His ship, the UES Discovery, had been investigating precursor ruins for 8 months, collecting artifacts and data that the Council had never bothered to study properly. "Captain," called his science officer, Dr. Lisa Barnes, "you need to see this." Nick hurried to the science station, where Lisa was analyzing a series of genetic samples they had collected from the ruins. The data on her screen showed DNA sequences that looked strangely familiar. "What am I looking at, Doctor?" "Sir, these genetic samples from the precursor ruins show remarkable similarities to human DNA, not exact matches. But the base structures are incredibly close." Nick felt a chill run down his spine. "How close?" "Close enough that I believe humans and the precursors are related." Captain, I think humans might be descendants of the original precursor civilization. The implications were staggering. For decades, the Council species had treated humans as newcomers to the galaxy, primitive beings who had only recently achieved space travel. But if humans were descended from the precursors, they weren't newcomers at all. They were the children of the galaxy's greatest civilization, finally returning home. Doctor, prepare a complete report. This information needs to reach Earth immediately. Back in Council space, the situation was growing more desperate every day. On the industrial world of Nexus Prime, factory supervisor Velcrin watched his production lines grinding to a halt. The massive manufacturing complex had once produced advanced technology for the entire galaxy, but now it was struggling to meet even basic needs. Status report, Velcrin demanded. Sir, production is down 70% from last year. We've lost critical expertise in 17 different manufacturing processes. The quality control systems are failing, and our reject rate has increased by 400%. Velcrin's forearms drooped in defeat. The humans who had worked in his factories hadn't just been following procedures, they had been constantly improving those procedures, solving problems and innovating new techniques. Human engineers like Tom Foster and Sarah White had introduced manufacturing methods that increased efficiency while reducing waste, but the humans were gone, and with them went the knowledge of how to adapt production to changing conditions. The alien workers could follow established procedures when everything went perfectly, but they couldn't handle the unexpected problems that arose constantly in complex manufacturing. Sir, his aide continued, we've also lost contracts with 6 major suppliers. They're now selling their products to the Sol Alliance instead. That was the most painful part of all. Not only had the Council lost human expertise, but they were also losing other species to humanity's new alliance. The Delphians had been supplying biomaterials to Council factories for decades, but now they were trading exclusively with the Sol Alliance. The Crystri had stopped selling their computational crystals to Council buyers, preferring to work with their new human partners. On the Council's capital world, Supreme Counselor Thexmaron received daily reports of species defecting to the Sol Alliance. The process had started slowly, with individual worlds requesting permission to join the humans. But now entire species were abandoning the Council. How many have we lost this week? He asked his aide wearily. 7 worlds and 1 complete species, sir. The Aquatic Federation has formally withdrawn from the Council and applied for Sol Alliance membership. Thexmaron felt his ancient heart breaking. The Aquatic Federation had been a Council member for 800 years. Their departure meant the loss of their advanced biotechnology and their critical position along major trade routes. Why are they leaving? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Sir, they cite the same reasons as the others. They want to join a civilization that values cooperation and innovation over tradition and hierarchy. They say the Sol Alliance offers them opportunities for growth that the Council never provided. The irony was bitter. The Council had always prided itself on being the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. They had looked down on younger species, believing that age and tradition automatically meant superiority. But now those younger species were building something new and better, while the ancient powers crumbled. Sir, his aide continued quietly, there's more. Our intelligence reports indicate that the Sol Alliance is developing technologies that surpass anything we've ever achieved. Their new dimensional research could make our fastest ships obsolete. Their biotechnology is healing conditions we've never been able to treat. And their computational abilities? Enough, Thexmaron said. I understand. The truth was painful but undeniable. Humanity hadn't just left the Council, they had surpassed it. While the Council struggled to maintain their failing civilization, the humans and their allies were building the foundation for something unprecedented. Dr. Ryan Clark's dimensional bridge technology was just the beginning. Working with Crystri computational power, Delphian biological innovation, and lumen energy manipulation, human scientists were making breakthroughs that seemed almost magical to the older species. The Council had spent centuries convinced that Their way was the only way, that tradition and established hierarchy were more important than innovation and equality. They had treated humans as students who needed to learn from their betters, but now it was clear that the students had become the teachers. The species that the Council had dismissed as primitive were creating a new kind of galactic civilization, one that valued every member's contributions and encouraged unlimited growth. 5 years after the humans departed in silence, President Sam Davis of the United Earth Coalition stood in the command center of the new galactic capital being built in orbit around Earth. Through the massive viewports, he could see construction. Ships from dozens of species working together to create something the galaxy had never seen before, a truly cooperative civilization. "Status report on the Council situation," Sam said to his chief of staff. Admiral Kate Phillips. Kate consulted her datapad, her expression grim. "Mr. President, what remains of the Galactic Council has formally requested surrender terms. They're asking permission to join our alliance under any conditions we deem acceptable." Sam nodded slowly. It had taken 5 years, but the inevitable had finally happened. The proud council that had once dismissed humanity as a developing species was now begging to be rescued by the very people they had rejected. "How many council species are still independent?" Sam asked. "Only 3, sir. The Zephyrians, the Nexari, and the Telarians. Everyone else has either joined our alliance or been destroyed in the wars." The wars had been terrible to watch. Without human diplomats to keep the peace, old hatred between species had exploded into conflicts that devastated entire star systems. Commander Grace Turner had tried to negotiate ceasefires from her position in the Sol Alliance, but the Council species had been too proud to accept help from humans until it was too late. "Sir," Kate continued, "Ambassador Chris Miller is ready to address the Council's final session whenever you give the word." Sam looked out at the bustling construction around Earth. Ships from 23 different species worked side by side, their crews cooperating in ways that would have seemed impossible under the old Council system. The Delphians' bioships grew new sections using living materials. Crystalline vessels shaped metal with thought alone. Lumen energy beings provided power that made impossible things possible, and human ships coordinated it all, bringing different species together in perfect harmony. "Tell Ambassador Miller to proceed," Sam said. "It's time to end this." In what had once been the Grand Council chambers, Ambassador Chris Miller stood before the few remaining delegates. The magnificent hall that had once housed representatives from dozens of species now held only a handful of survivors. The seats were mostly empty, the proud banners hung in tatters, and the ancient ceremonial lights flickered with failing power. Supreme Counselor Thexmaran, now looking ancient and defeated, sat in the central chair. His forearms trembled as he spoke into the failing communication system. "Ambassador Miller," he said in a voice barely above a whisper, "we formally surrender all authority to the Sol Alliance. We accept whatever terms you offer." Chris looked around the ruined chamber, feeling a mixture of sadness and vindication. These beings had once commanded the greatest civilization in the galaxy. They had treated humans like children, denied them respect, and dismissed their contributions. Now they were broken remnants begging for mercy. "Counselor Thexmaran," Chris said gently, "the Sol Alliance doesn't want your surrender. We want your cooperation." A murmur of surprise ran through the small gathering. Thexmaran's eyes widened in confusion. "I don't understand," the old Nexari said. Chris activated a holographic display that showed the new galactic map. Green areas marked Sol Alliance territory, which now covered most of the galaxy. Small red zones showed the remaining council space, torn by war and economic collapse. The Sol Alliance was built on principles of equality and cooperation, Chris explained. Every species that joins us becomes a full partner with equal rights and equal representation. We don't have rulers and subjects, we have colleagues working toward common goals. But surely you want revenge for how we treated you," said Counselor. Vexhai, the Zephyrian whose silver skin had turned dull gray with shame. Chris shook his head. Counselor, revenge would accomplish nothing. What we want is to build a better galaxy where no species is treated as inferior, where everyone's contributions are valued, and where cooperation replaces domination. On the main view screen, images appeared showing Sol Alliance worlds. Council delegates saw species they had once dismissed as primitive now thriving in advanced cities. Delphian underwater metropolises sparkled with bioluminescent technology. Crystal mountain cities gleamed with perfectly shaped crystal spires. Lumen energy beings danced through space stations powered by pure thought. How is this possible? Vexmaran asked in amazement. It's possible because we listen to each other, Chris replied. When the Delphians suggested using living ships that could repair themselves, we didn't dismiss the idea as impossible. When the Crystri proposed computational systems based on crystal matrices, we helped them develop the technology. When the Lumens offered to share their energy manipulation techniques, we found ways to integrate them with our engineering. The truth was becoming clear to the surviving council members. They had failed not because they lacked technology or resources, but because they had never learned to truly work together. Each species had guarded their secrets, competed for dominance, and refused to consider that others might have valuable contributions. There's something else you need to know, Chris continued. He activated another display showing genetic analysis. Data from the precursor ruins. Our scientists have made a remarkable discovery about human origins. The data showed DNA comparisons between humans and samples found in ancient precursor sites across the galaxy. The matches were too close to be coincidental. We believe that humans are descendants of the original precursor civilization, Chris announced. The infrastructure you've been using for millennia, the technology you've been maintaining, the space stations and hyperspace routes, they were all built by our ancestors. The silence in the chamber was deafening. For thousands of years, the council species had believed themselves to be the inheritors of precursor technology. They had built their entire civilization on the foundation left by the ancient race, never imagining that the precursor's children might return. That explains so much, Vexmaran whispered. Your intuitive understanding of our technology, your ability to improve systems we could barely maintain, your talent for bringing different species together? Chris nodded. The precursors were explorers and unifiers. They brought species together across the galaxy, sharing knowledge and building cooperative societies. When they vanished, their empire broke apart into competing factions that eventually became the council races. So when you left us, Vexhai said slowly, you weren't running away, you were going home. In a sense, yes, Chris agreed. But more importantly, we were reclaiming our heritage. The precursors believed in cooperation, equality, and shared growth. That's what the Sol Alliance represents, a return to those principles. Admiral Kate Phillips entered the chamber, carrying a formal document. Mr. President has approved the integration accords, she announced. Chris turned back to the council delegates. You have a choice. You can try to rebuild your old civilization, based on hierarchy and competition, or you can join us in building something new based on cooperation and mutual respect. What would joining the alliance mean? Vexmaran asked. It means equality, Chris replied. Your species would have the same rights and representation as everyone else. Your knowledge and experience would be valued. Your people would be welcome on any alliance world. And in return, you would help us continue building a better galaxy for all species. Councillor Vexhai stood slowly, his aged frame straightening with new purpose. Ambassador Miller, on behalf of the Zephyrian Empire, I formally request membership in the Sol Alliance. One by one, the other delegates followed suit. The Nexari, the Talarians, and representatives from the scattered remnants of other council species all requested to join the new galactic civilization. Chris smiled as he watched the formal ceremony that marked the end of the old order and the beginning of something unprecedented. The galaxy now had a single government based on cooperation rather than domination, equality rather than hierarchy. Later, Admiral Kate Phillips stood on the observation deck of the new galactic capital, watching ships from 30 different species work together in perfect harmony. The construction was nearly complete, and soon this would become the center of a galactic civilization that spanned the entire galaxy. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" said President Sam Davis, joining her at the viewport. "Yes, sir," Kate replied. "Hard to believe it all started because we had the courage to leave," Sam nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes you have to walk away from something broken to build something better." The council was so focused on maintaining their ancient hierarchies that they forgot the purpose of civilization to help all species grow and thrive together. "Do you think they've really learned?" Kate asked. "We'll see," Sam said. "But I'm optimistic. The old leaders who caused the problems are mostly gone. The new generation of council species seems to understand that cooperation works better than competition." As they watched, a massive ship arrived at the construction site. It was a hybrid vessel that perfectly represented the new galactic civilization. Human engineering providing the framework, Delphium biotechnology handling life support, Crystary computational cores managing navigation, and Lumen energy systems providing clean, unlimited power.